Okay, so this is going to be a slightly awkward video because I'm going to be criticizing the position of somebody I actually quite like. Having said that, I don't know the person, so I like them as a public figure, but I just disagree with the stance that she is taking. I'm just going to read this out. This is from the Times, the London Times. So, race row over white actors in Chinese roles. A theatre has become embroiled in a racism row over its decision to cast white actors in a play set in ancient China. About 100 people protested outside the print room in Notting Hill Gate, West London, holding placards with slogans such as Narnia is imaginary, China is real, and this production was made by racists. The group included Gemma Chan, 34, the actress best known for the sci-fi drama Humans on Channel 4. The theatre said it was sorry for clearly misjudging the offence some would take, but denied it had behaved in a discriminatory manner. It plans to meet the Actors Union Equity to discuss the issue. Miss Chan, who also appeared in the Harry Potter spin-off film Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, said that any form of yellowface, a term that describes white actors playing East Asians, is unacceptable. She joined Benedict Wong, the Hollywood actor, at the demonstration before the press launch of The Depths of Dead Love on Thursday. Miss Chan, who has a Chinese Scottish mother and a father from Hong Kong, told the London Evening Standard that the protest was peaceful, adding, I am shocked this happened. You would think that artists in the theatre community would be more aware. Miss Chan added, they said this is a very English play, dealing with very English Moors. The implication there is the implication there is that an English play needs white actors, which is problematic. Okay, the term yellowface, I think in this context it is talking about the fact that it was all white actors. I don't think it literally means they yellowed up their face. If it was applying makeup, I actually can see why that would be problematic, why it would be prude. It does seem a bit archaic to do something like that, but the report doesn't seem to indicate that was the case. Rather, yellowface is just a term used for the fact that it was an all-white cast playing Chinese roles. Okay, so I just don't really see the major issue here. Okay, I'm not an actor. I'm not a producer. I'm not a director. I am speaking purely as someone who likes film and okay, this was a theatre production, so it's a slightly different medium, but it's more or less got the same purpose, which is entertaining people. It's a form of art. It's intended to be a form of escape and entertainment. As I understand it, the play is set in ancient China, so I suppose you can make the argument that the actors should be appropriate for the roles they're playing, and if it's set in ancient China, well, then it would make sense to cast Chinese actors or actors of Chinese descent. But there is frankly a bit of hypocrisy coming from, um, I hate to say it, but coming from Gemma Chan. And I don't like saying that because I've always got a good impression from her. I get the impression she's a decent person. She always seems very likable in interviews. You know, she never strikes me as being stuck up or anything like that. She's always very uh, diplomatic in the way she talks about things. But she's joined this protest. I'm only mentioning her because I'm not that familiar with Mr. Wong. Um, I just think that if you're going to make a big political issue out of something like this, you have to be consistent. And this is the problem I have. On one hand, Asian British actors, including Gemma Chan, have complained that Asian actors are always put into stereotypical roles. The Harry Potter actress Katie Long has also made this complaint. And yet, when there are roles that are about Chinese characters, if white people play those roles, then it's racism. So you can't have it both ways. If on one hand you're saying, oh, don't stereotype us, then don't say, well, we're not going to do those roles, but we're going to shout racism if white people do. You know, someone has to do the roles. And someone raised a good point on the Evening Standard news thread on this. Um, if if the production company, casts actors, um, and if let's say Chinese actors did turn up for the job and were turned down, that would be discriminatory. But there's no indication in either of, I've seen two reports on this, in either report that that was the case. So the allegation that this production was made by racists, I think, is inflammatory and irresponsible. And I think Gemma Chan and others need to be very careful about throwing those sort of smears around because that's what it is, a smear. Um, I'm not saying they're not entitled to their opinion, and if I was of Chinese descent, I might have a different take on it. But I just don't like the double standards. Put it this way, in China, there are productions of Shakespeare with all Chinese casts. Now, if you look at Shakespeare's plays, they they had universal messages, but were by and large set in European context. Take, for example, Romeo and Juliet. It was set in Renaissance Italy. So if you want to be really politically correct, surely then the only people that can play Romeo and Juliet are Italians. Or if you want to be really politically correct, the only people that can play Romeo and Juliet are Veronians. I mean, where do you draw the line with the stupidity in this? It just seems to me that they're being overly sensitive and they they're slandering this company as being racist when there's no indication that the company actually said to Chinese actors, no, you can't do this role. I mean, I don't know all the details. I'm only going by these news reports. If the company has explicitly excluded Chinese actors, then by definition that's discriminatory, especially given that it's a play set in ancient China. But I think actors in general need to stop um, turning everything into matters of politics or gender or race. It just gets very tiring and it just lends to the notion that they are in a little bubble where they don't understand priorities in life. The fact of the matter is, the general public don't care. They just don't care because what they see is people being actors. The point of an actor is to portray a role, not be a role, not not be somebody else. Obviously, a good actor is going to try their best to portray the role as best as possible. Now, Gemma Chan's a very good actress. I liked her role in Humans. Um, Incidentally, the roles that she has done recently have had nothing to do with Chinese stereotyping. I mean, for goodness sake, in Humans, she played a synthetic humanoid. In the Harry Potter production. Okay, I think her role was as it was a very brief role, but I think she played a Chinese witch or something like that. I don't know. I haven't read the story, but the point is, actors need to understand that first and foremost they are entertainers, and when they always make productions about some sinister thing like racism, then all it does is kind of make people think that they're well, to me, it takes away a bit of that. I'm going to look at Chan productions from now on and think, okay, is she going to be complaining next week that she's being typecast or something? Frankly, when you're on the sort of salary that she is on, to make issue out of these sort of things, that there's no evidence that it's hard racism, I think that's preposterous. Um, so I'm pleased that the print room isn't sort of buying to these bullying tactics. And in a sense, that's what it is. I mean, it was a peaceful protest. They're entitled to protest. I just think it's very misguided. Or put it this way, even if you say, well, it was absolutely justified, at least be consistent. At least then hold the same standards whenever you have any production featuring actors who don't fit into the role. A few years ago, a black actress played the role of Guinevere in the Merlin production. Now, that was a light-hearted production. A lot of people at the time got annoyed by it. Personally, I don't really care because I think that was meant to be a light-hearted production. But there's double standards. I very much doubt Gemma Chan and other um, people connected with equity went about shouting about, that was a black actress taking on a role which, let's face it, is more connected with a white person. Guinevere, Arthur, the Arthurian legends, is set in ancient Britain. There were probably less than 1%, if that, black people in ancient Britain. So it's It's just absurd. I mean, if Idris Elba becomes the next James Bond, am I going to go out and pick it and say, "Oh, this is black facing a white role"? No, because I would understand that in that case it's a fictional role, and Idris Elba is a fine actor. I just don't like the double standards. And why is it that the racism thing only comes up when it's white people involved? That's bullshit. So is Gemma Chan and the others going to be protesting? Let's say, for the sake of argument, you had a production in Nigeria which was based on an ancient Chinese story. Would they then protest because all the actors were black playing Chinese roles? I'm just using that. I'm not saying it's happened. I'm just saying in that scenario, would they be protesting? I don't think so. Because it is only racism when white people are involved, and that to me is bullshit. So, I didn't really want to make this because it is kind of awkward criticizing someone that you actually quite like, but I just don't agree with the position she's taking, or at least her inconsistency. I mean, to me, it just seems absurd to, on one hand, complain that Chinese actors of Chinese descent, are typecast, but then complain. I mean, if no Chinese actor, let's say this role was freely open, and no Chinese actor applied for it, frankly, I don't think they can complain because it's a huge difference between leaving a role open and then it just happens to be white people playing the role, um, and actually discriminating against people. Um, because actually, there is, I'm not even going to say reverse racism, I don't believe in such a concept. I believe in racism. If you are saying that white actors can't play a role, surely that is arguably anti white racism. When you look at it that way, if you're excluding people from playing a role solely because of the race, surely that's anti white racism. So I just think there's a lot of double standards here, and I think actors need to. I mean, to be fair to Gemma Chan, like I say, she strikes me as a reasonable and likable person, and I think she's very patient. I mean, like I say, the other day I saw that video of her signing autographs, and it would, drive a lot of people, get a lot of people annoyed. She was very patient, and she, was very grateful for that and all. So, I don't want to attack her too much on a personal basis, but she did choose to go to this protest and make a big thing out of it. So I think, if people are going to think that they can just slander others as racist, they need to answer questions as well, and that needs to be based on hard evidence. I don't think they have hard evidence here. So for me, that's what's problematic. They're basically smearing this company as being some horrible white supremacist company, and I think that's unfair, based on the information that we have. If the company specifically discriminated against Asian actors, then yeah, that would be discriminatory. But just be consistent. In other words, if you're going to protest against this, okay, protest all Chinese productions of Shakespeare. Be consistent.